A friend of mine had a birthday dinner last year. Nothing extravagant. A small restaurant reservation. About 12 people around the table. One of the guests had a decent social media following, around 8,000 people. Before the dinner even started, he'd already posted about it. Countdown stories, updates, little previews of the night. And when everyone actually sat down together, something interesting happened. Most of the evening, he had his phone out, taking photos of the food, checking who had viewed his story, posting little clips of the night. From the outside, it looked like he was documenting the celebration. But by the end of the evening, someone at the table quietly said something that stuck with me. "I don't think he was really here tonight." 8,000 people online saw a version of the dinner. But the 12 people sitting at the table got very little of the actual person. Meanwhile, another guest did the opposite. No phone. No posts. He talked with everyone. Remembered details about people's lives from conversations months earlier. The next morning, the birthday host texted him just to say it meant a lot that he came. That contrast says something interesting about how we experience life today. Because the difference between documenting a moment and being present in it is more psychological than most people realize. There's research that helps explain why. A study published in the Journal of Consumer Research found that when people expect to share an experience online, they often enjoy the experience less. Even before posting anything. The moment your brain starts thinking about how something will look to others, part of your attention shifts outward. You're no longer fully inside the experience. You're also observing it, framing it, preparing it for an audience. And those two mental processes compete with each other. One part of you is living the moment. Another part of you is curating it. Over time, that split attention changes how memories form. Experiences feel slightly shallower, less immersive, and some people eventually notice that cost. Which is why certain people quietly step away from documenting their lives online. But the reasons people leave social media aren't always simple. Sometimes it isn't a calm philosophical decision. Sometimes something pushes them away. A painful comparison. A vulnerable post that didn't land the way they expected. A period of depression where everyone else's highlight reels felt unbearable to look at. For many people, stepping back was less about rejecting technology and more about protecting their mental space. What often surprises them is what happens after. A few weeks later, something changes. The constant urge to check reactions fades. The habit of thinking about how moments will appear to others begins to disappear. And people often describe a very specific sensation. Quiet, not the absence of connection. More like the disappearance of background noise they didn't realize had been there. Psychologists sometimes describe a trait called private self-consciousness. It refers to people who naturally focus more on their internal experience than on how they appear to others. Instead of asking, "How does this look?" they tend to ask, "How does this feel?" That orientation can feel unusual in a culture that emphasizes visibility. Because modern social platforms encourage constant outward awareness. How many people saw this? How did they respond? How does my life compare to theirs? But people who lean more toward inward awareness often experience life differently. They're less focused on performance and more focused on experience. And that difference affects relationships too. Not posting as much can create friction socially. Some people stay connected through feeds. When the feed disappears, so does the easy connection point. Certain relationships fade quietly. But something else tends to happen as well. The people who continue to reach out are usually different. They text. They call. They make plans. The connection becomes more direct. And research supports the idea that those deeper relationships matter more. The Harvard Study of Adult Development, one of the longest-running studies on human well-being, found that the quality of close relationships is one of the strongest predictors of long-term health and happiness. Not the number of connections, the depth of them. And depth usually requires presence. The kind of presence that doesn't happen easily when part of your attention is always somewhere else. Some people remember a time before social media existed at all. and many of them describe the same thing about those years. Life felt more private, not necessarily better in every way, but more personal. Moments didn't need to be captured to feel real. They didn't need validation from an audience. They simply existed. Today, younger generations often have to relearn that skill deliberately. The ability to let a moment remain a moment. To experience something without translating it into content. And people who rediscover that habit often describe a subtle but powerful shift. They feel more present, more connected to what they're actually doing, less concerned about how their lives appear, more concerned with how they're actually lived. It's not really about rejecting technology. It's about reclaiming attention. Because attention is where life actually happens. And when attention stays in the moment instead of constantly drifting toward an audience, something interesting returns. A feeling that your experiences belong to you again. Not as posts, not as updates, but simply as moments you were fully there for.